comes through in the book when you're revisiting is the characters that make up Backroads, and you know, the beloved characters in the early days of Pinky and Moira. I guess, what was it like also going back and remembering all these people you met on the way, and did you, I guess, are you staying in touch with these people, and did you find the book a way to kind of reconnect as well?
Yes. So that was actually the best thing about writing the book, because I was getting pretty sick of those maps spread right around across the dining room table, thinking, oh my God, now do you take the C13 or the, you know, the whatever, trying to put that in the book, which was really important because I don't want to give people dumb directions to go in. But the best part was actually ringing all the people that I'd met in these various towns and places, reconnecting, although a lot of them do stay in touch. Pinky, you've mentioned, who's the hairdresser in Winton near Longreach, who of course has pink hair. I don't know why, but she's had pink hair for I think 30 years. And little Moira, who's now Big Moira, from Yakandanda in Victoria, the high country, the edge of the high country, who was one of the first people that we interviewed when we were starting Backroads. But anyway, it was just great to ring them all and reconnect and find out, you know, how many grandchildren they had now, or, you know, their kids had gone to boarding school and what they were doing. And so that was my favourite bit, really, about, seeing what they were all up to, even though they do often stay in touch.
And how have you found some of the towns have changed as a result of the program? Are there any that kind of strike out in your mind?
Yeah, some towns we've really kept alive, I think, especially the really small ones. And this was an unexpected byproduct of Backroads when it began, is that the town started reporting that they were getting up to a 30% increase in visitors and people spending money in their shops, and they started thinking, this is all right. So then, of course, we started getting more towns suggesting that we come and visit their places. But that's a really, really great thing. And tiny places, and there are a lot of them in Australia, like Hebel, for example, which is just across the border from New South Wales in Queensland, about 40 minutes from Lightning Ridge. And all that's there is a pub and a general store. We somehow managed to do a whole episode around Hebel, and the population is 14. But it was a local farming bloke bought the pub and saved it, and the town was so grateful to him. And those 14 characters were bloody rippers. Like, they were just told such great stories, and so that gave them a massive boost. And now they've got all sorts of people calling in, and it's really given the pub, you know, a new lease of life. So much so that they're going to do the Outback Queensland book launch there for me, which will be interesting.
But there's also towns that you've revisited even within the program, and you mentioned in the book as well, I'm thinking Eugowra, and communities impacted by bushfires and floods. What is it like going back to those towns? And you reflect in the book on, I suppose, the importance of community and a strong community. It'd be great if you could speak a little bit about that.
Yeah, so I grew up on a farm in Victoria, which is probably fairly obvious that I was a country girl, and that was it is on the Goulburn River. So I grew up with a strong sense of community and always being taught that you had to give back, especially when there's disaster. So there are a lot of bushfires around us at various times, and never as bad as some of the ones that you see these days. But for Mallacoota, which is a town we went back to, that was just absolutely devastating. It's a town that I'd visited way before Backroads kicked off. It had always been a favourite of mine, and that town was almost destroyed by terrible fires, which a lot of people here I'm sure would remember, you know, when the boats had to come in to try and rescue people, and the skies were blood red, and so that was a tough one to go back to, because it was like going to a completely new landscape. It was completely changed, and you'd remember when you were a kid when we used to go there. And then the other one, Eugowra, that was the other end of the extreme. That was floods, random floods near Cowra that just came out of nowhere. No one was prepared for them, and that again was very hard to go back to. And it's interesting, and this is a very human emotion. I think the first thing you do is just hug each other because there's nothing else you can do really, and that's what happened with both places, but particularly Eugowra. And yeah, tears, but you feel like you need to share the pain, especially when you've been there in happier times, and be part of showing the rebuilding process, which I think is what we did, and they all seemed pleased with the results. I didn't want to be like, you know, a journalist or member of the media that's dancing on disaster. So we were very careful about how we approached it and made sure that we were welcome back, and we were. That was very nice.
And it's in the book, Your Own Town, Murchison, which we'll get to, but there's a part...
Oh, will we?
Well, we have time, yeah, we'll get it. But no, there's a line about, I can't remember it exactly, but it's so many people interviewed in the show when you say, you know, what is it you love about this town? And they'll say it's home, and that you understand that with Murchison. But I guess there's also a sense of that with communities like Eugowra, where they could leave but they stay because it's home.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, and also, I think disasters do often bring people closer together. They can tear people apart, but they can also really bring communities closer together, or families closer together. And you see that in Australia time and time again, and I think that's very reassuring. It is to me, because, you know, plenty of bad things have happened to lots of us, I'm sure, over the years, but it is reassuring to know how resilient we can be and bounce back, and that's what these communities manage to do.
I want to talk as well about those really, really beautiful descriptions in the book of family holidays and road trips that you went on.
Beautiful?
Yes. No, they are. You talk about when you were younger and you'd be, you know, going down the Great Ocean Road with your sister and your brother and your parents, and your dad would be winding down the window to have a cigarette, and
well, he only wound the window down if we asked him to.
Yeah. And having like the wet towels hanging.
Yeah, Mum used to hang wet towels to keep the car cool.
Yeah. I love this description of staying in guest houses with starched white linen tablecloths and waitresses in black frocks and frilly aprons. I guess what do you think has changed from those days, and what's remained the same? Obviously, we don't have the. No, you certainly don't have probably the smoking in the car with the 3 kids in the back with no seatbelts. But mind you, cars didn't have seatbelts back then. And he'd even have a rolly tucked behind his ear for later, for the next one. And I think I also wrote in the book that we learned quite early on in the piece that if you needed a loo stop, it was always wise to pick a town, you know, that you were going through and there was a pub, because that meant they'd stop there for you to go to proper loos, not on the roadside, and they'd have a beer and you get a raspberry lemonade. We were right onto that one. And then I learned, I was being interviewed by Richard Glover on ABC Radio here in Sydney yesterday, and he was saying, oh, that's how it was for all of us. Because I said, do you think my parents were really bad? He said, nah, they all did that. That made me feel much better. But I guess back in those days, a lot of the towns weren't bypassed as well.
Oh, no. And they'd stop at them to get something to eat. And but yeah, all our holidays pretty much were road trips, because my dad couldn't swim. So he wasn't keen on going to the beach. But my mother loved swimming. Yeah. So it was sort of like half and half. That's why we sometimes got to Lorne, you're referring to, on the Great Ocean Road, where they used to have a couple of beautiful old guest houses, which don't exist anymore. And yeah, lovely old dining rooms with beautiful furniture and the white linen tablecloths and shared bathrooms. I mean, nobody had copped that anymore. But I lament their loss a bit, because it was another era. But people want different things now.
Yeah. And this is also, there's some great photos in the book of, in your youth, you did a Nullarbor trip. How old were you?
I think I was 21. Yeah.
Wow. Can you describe...
Another crazy thing.
Yeah, can you describe that, what it was like, and then what it was like kind of redoing it on back roads?
Yeah, so I was with my mate, Steve-O, and we were all country girls who shared a house in Melbourne. We'd all sort of been to boarding school and stuff together, all grown up together. And Steve-O had a Datsun Stanza. And we somehow thought that, yeah, sure, we can drive. One of our friends in the house had just got married to a WA bloke who was a farmer over there. and which we thought was pretty crazy. She was only 21 and we thought she was missing all these great parties and what was she thinking? But anyway, we kindly agreed to go over and visit her in the Datsun Stanza across the Nullarbor. And of course, there was a hole in the muffler, you know, before you knew it. And then the muffler completely fell off. And we got to Eucla, which if anyone's done the Nullarbor, they'd know where I'm talking about, one of the places to stop at on your way. And there were all these truckies there saying, bloody hell, we could hear you coming from miles away. And you're a couple of Sheilas. We were stuck there for days too. And one of them finally fixed the damn thing. And we kept on going, but we still laugh about that. And anyway, then I got to go back many, many years later to film a Back Roads. And we did 2 episodes. And I was amazed to see Eucla, because it no longer just was a fuel stop. But it, had a 3-star motel and a swimming pool. And we were, you know, only the ABC would do this. We were rostered a day off there. We had to have, you know, a certain number of breaks during our 2 weeks of filming. So they gave us a roster day off at Eucla. Breaks.
And how did you spend that day off?
Well, I went for a walk. And then I thought I'll have a swim, but no one had cleaned the pool for days. So that was off. And in the end, I think I read a book. And the camera crew just sat around drinking beer. So I thought, this has worked really well. Thank you, ABC.
And I know that you find it really difficult, which makes sense when people say, you know, what's your favourite town that you've done?
So you're going to ask me that?
No. But if you were to recommend some of the specific routes that you can take in this book, or some of the places that I guess really stood out to you that you think, you know, aren't the Port Douglases that we're all going to.
Yeah.
What would you say?
Don't get me wrong, I do like Port Douglas.
No.
It's not the only place you have to go to. Yeah, no disrespect. So hang on, what's the towns I recommend?
So in the book,
trip.
if you had to choose either one of the trips or some of the destinations in there that you wouldn't miss.
Okay. So I've said this before, but I know everyone loves the Kimberley. But I think the Pilbara should not be forgotten. I love the colours in the Pilbara. I think they're so richer in some ways to what you see in the Kimberley. And I love Karijini National Park, where you have all these beautiful waterfalls and pools you can swim in, and I just loved that. And then there are all sorts of road trips that people probably don't think of. That they always, for some reason, people think, oh, Outback, Birdsville, you know, because it's the Birdsville races. But in fact, I reckon the Strzelecki track or the Unadata track are way more interesting and less touristy. So they're in South Australia, but, you know, gets you to almost to the Queensland border, the Strzelecki track does, from Murray up to Inaminka, which I've done. I loved that. Apart from the 2 flat tyres we had there, punctures. And Unadata track is great, that goes in the other direction. And you end up, almost at Cooper Pedy. So that's a goodie. And in Western Australia, New South Wales, the Waterfall Way is a ripper where I got the apart from the ant nest, but steer clear of the ant nest. But that's just a beautiful, beautiful drive, and that's not that hard to do. You know, it doesn't take very long, really. Like counting, if you drove it straight, you'd do that in 2.5 hours. Yeah. So that's a really good. There are so many, you know, long or short.
And what about some of the characters that have stuck out in your mind? Because I think another great aspect of Backroads is kind of breaking down these myths that, you know, the country isn't multicultural.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. When there's so many, you know, incredibly multicultural communities like Leeton that you...
Yeah, Leeton's great.
Yeah.
So my husband Bazza and I were through Leeton just recently for the Gather Round Footy Festival. We thought we'd pop into Leeton. And that is I think there are 35, I don't know if any of you here have been to Leeton, but you've actually got to make an effort. It's a dog leg to get there. And that has, I think, 35 different nationalities living there now. And it's an Art Deco town designed by Walter Burley Griffin. So not just Canberra. You know, everyone associates him with Canberra, but he actually did Leeton as well. And they had this incredible Art Deco festival. And a big welcome sign at the you know, as you enter town. We welcome all refugees, all nationalities. It's refreshing to see that. Yeah, just a terrific town, which began with the Italians, as is the case in so many country towns in certain parts of Australia. The Italians came first, the Italians and the Greeks, and then you had the Vietnamese coming in, and now you've got, Afghans and all sorts of different nationalities. But yeah, another town that comes to mind is Katanning in Western Australia. Again, that's 40, I think, different nationalities represented there. A lot of these towns have meatworks, where foreign workers move in and then decide to stay with their families. But yeah, we've met some great people. Like at Katanning, I met a bloke called Alep, who has the broadest Australian accent now you could imagine. But I think from Cocos Island and Malaysia, mixture of the two, and makes the best curry puffs going, and is this mad footy fan. And he's the local imam. He wears his footy colours in the mosque. Like, you don't see this anywhere else. It's hilarious. Anyway, whenever I'm going through Katanning, I pop in to see him, and hey, here's a dozen curry puffs for you. And I'll go, Alep, I'm not going far. Yes, but the crew might like them. You take them.